We're just going to give everyone a little minute to get into the Zoom link. It looks like we're almost ready.
No.
Okay, Effie, I think you can start.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Special Education and Inclusion Parent Guardian Caregiver Session number 1 for this school year. This session is going to be focused on supporting students with autism spectrum disorder, and we will begin with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. And we also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. And we're moving on to the agenda for today. Okay, we're going to begin with our communication strategies. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Janine Daly, and I am a speech language pathologist at Toronto District School Board. And I just wanted to talk to you today about a few general strategies that we can do to help support our children's communication skill development. So on the first slide here, you can see it talks about keeping things short. And basically what it means by that is we really want to make sure that we're not giving too much information when we are communicating with our children. We know that a lot of individuals with autism often need more time to think about the information that they're getting before they're able to respond. So instead of saying something to our children, such as it's time to go to the grocery store, but first get your shoes on and then we got to get your coat on. Instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to give one instruction at once. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we really want to make sure we are engaged in play with our children as often as possible. I know it's hard because we're all so busy, but we really want to, stop and see what it is that our children are interested in and then join in that play. And when we're joining in that play, we can use short, simple language to describe what it is that they're seeing and experiencing. Next slide, please. Another thing we really want to focus on is giving our children opportunities to communicate with us. So when we think about communication, we often think that we're focused just on speech, but a lot of children with autism may not be speaking yet, or they may not be able to speak in that moment because they're dysregulated, for example. So we really want to look at all the ways that our children are communicating with us and honor all of those ways. So it may be that they're pointing, it may be that they're gesturing, maybe they're pulling you by the hand, they're pushing you away. We really want to make sure that we are honoring all the ways that our children are communicating with us and putting language to it. Okay. Next slide, please. Whoops. Okay. So another topic I just wanted to briefly talk about is augmentative and alternative communication, which is often referred to as AAC. So AAC refers to a variety of tools and strategies which can be used to supplement or further support the development of your child's communication skills. So these tools and strategies are often used with children who are non-speaking or minimally speaking. And one strategy that we can use to help teach children augmentative and alternative communication strategies is called aided language stimulation. So put simply, it basically means that the communication partner, which is often the adult, is going to pair their spoken language with pictures or symbols. So for example, you may have a picture or a symbol that represents the word go. And each time that you need to go somewhere, so it may be that you need to go get your coat, it may be that you need to go outside, you would then pair that symbol or that picture with your spoken language to help support your child's understanding of what it is that you're saying. But then what we also hope will happen is maybe your child will then start to use those symbols or those pictures on their own to communicate with you. Okay, so that may be that your child then goes and finds the picture for go, and they show it to you because they want to go outside. So on the next slide, I actually have a short video which just demonstrates what aided language stimulation looks like. So the little girl in the video is Josie, and she has a device. I will mention, though, that not every child with autism needs a device to communicate. It's really a process, and there's a lot that goes into deciding if that's the right mode to use with children. Okay, so we'll just watch this short video just so you can see again how you can use that strategy, aided language stimulation, to help support your child's understanding and hopefully use of language using visuals. So we'll play the video now.
You might have to share again and put the audio on.
Created using Powtoon.
Okay. So I apologize. I know the audio wasn't working at the start of that video. But again, I just wanted to highlight the value of adding visuals to our spoken language when we are with our children. So I'm going to pass it on now to Lydia, who's going to talk about the next subject, which is transference of school skills to the home environment.
Thank you. In this section, we'll explore how to ensure skills that are mastered in classrooms can be transferred to home. We'll give you tips to help your child use their skills wherever they are. Both teaching and parenting are filled with big and small triumphs. When your child learns a skill, it's a win. For us who are educators, when our students learn a new concept or a new skill, it's a win. But here is what's important. We don't want these skills to stay at school or at home. We want them to work anywhere, anytime. When we teach a new skill, we are teaching that skill so the student can use it in other settings. When we teach adding numbers, for example, we want our student to add numbers in their classroom, in the grocery store, and at their future workplace. When we teach a socially significant skill such as waiting for your turn, we want our student to be able to do it with their peers in the classroom, but also with their siblings at home, or when playing with children at a playground in a park in your neighborhood. It's not enough for a child to learn something in one setting. They need to apply it everywhere. And that's what we achieve by creating a unified front and working together with your child's teacher. It's really important to talk to your teacher, to your child's teacher, learn about the skills being worked on at school and strategies that are in place, reinforce those same skills at home, use similar language to encourage and support skill development, and ask teachers about challenging situations they encounter and how they handle them. Next slide, please. That's why we always talk about the importance of homeschool communication. Homeschool communication is key in generalizing skills and maintaining all the things that your child can do both at school and at home. It's important to share not only what is being done at school, but the successes that you are having at home so that they can also be worked at school, especially if your child is receiving any ABA or other services. Similar goals can be worked on in all environments. It's important to share updates. It's important to discuss consistent approaches. It's really important to align goals. Share your IEP goals with community members who are working with your child, and vice versa. Share your community or service provider goals with your classroom teaching team to see how they can be incorporated into the school day. The sharing of information also provides you, as the parent, guardian, caregiver, an opportunity to share information about skills your child may be demonstrating at home that is important for the classroom teacher to know as well. For example, you may be using a picture schedule to support your morning routine. At times, it can be difficult for the classroom teaching team to speak to parents at drop-off times, and many students may use transportation to get them to and from school, so parents do not see the classroom teaching team often. Different ways that communication can happen include scheduling a meeting, writing in the homeschool communication book, attending parent-teacher conference nights, and if your child has an individual education plan, it is important to provide input by filling out the parent feedback sheet. The feedback sheet provides parents with the opportunity to share goals they would like worked on. To build a relationship with the classroom teaching team, I think it's very important to connect with the teacher at the beginning of the year and establish what is the best way to connect with them and what their preference is. Next slide, please. We'll talk about strategies for promoting generalization, and some are listed here on this slide. Using visual supports, practicing in different places, setting consistent routines, using social stories that explain social situations, giving positive feedback. We usually say that it's important that the skill is being generalized by being practiced by different people, meaning you as parents, siblings, relatives, maybe grandparents, in different locations. It can be different rooms of your home, in a park, in a community, using different materials, using different instructions. You may want to capture opportunities that allow your child to continue to use newly taught skills when opportunities happen in everyday life. For example, when teaching flexibility, and this is a very common example, Use every opportunity that naturally arises to teach your child to tolerate things not going the way they think they should go, such as, for example, drying their hands with a towel at home, but using a paper towel at school or an air dryer at the shopping mall. Next slide, please. So what school skills can be generalized at home? And the list is right here. Daily living skills, social skills, following directions, time management, using visual schedules or timers for homework and activities, problem solving, emotion regulation as well. But I'll just simplify it by saying, for example, putting items away, tidying up. That's a skill that is used in classroom settings and can be generalized at home as well. Then generalizing routines. Every classroom has a set of routines. But at home, your child's morning routine probably consists of getting dressed, eating breakfast, brushing teeth, putting on shoes, putting on jacket, putting on backpack, getting on school bus, etc. And also some independent leisure activities. Skills at school can be, there are many skills that can be generalized at home, but at the end, I would like to summarize just a few takeaway points. I would like to emphasize the importance of homeschool communication. Homeschool communication is really key in generalizing skills and maintaining all the things that your child can do both at school and home. And to build a relationship with the classroom teaching team, I think it's very important to connect with the teacher at the beginning of the year and establish what is the best way to connect with them. Most importantly, when thinking about the skill to generalize in the home, consider what makes sense for your household and what will be feasible. The skill your child learned at school may look different in the home, as we all have different home routines. And on that note, I'll hand over to my colleague Erin, who will speak about transitions.
Hi, I'm Erin Chawla. I'm part of the Autism Regional Services team, and thank you so much for coming and spending your morning with us. I'm going to talk a bit about transitions. Transition planning is important for all of us, but specifically for our autistic children in order to reduce their anxiety, to promote some independence, to support with their regulation, to help with adapting new environments and activities, and to build those self-advocacy skills. Many autistic people experience difficulties with transitions due to a deep focus on the current activity, making it hard to move away from it, due to a discomfort with unexpected or unfamiliar activities, maybe due to a lack of clarity regarding what's expected in the new environment, and also due to some differences in social communication and regulation. For many of our kids with autism, predictability and routine increases their regulation and their sense of safety and control. Next slide, please. So preparing a child ahead of time can support those successful changes and transitions. We recognize that all kids are diverse and come with a variety of strengths and skills. So here are some tips to consider, and you will decide what are the best ones that work for your child, your family, your adolescent. One good thing to do is to review the expectations so your child knows what's going to happen at an outing, what other people might behave like, and what are the expected behaviors from the people in your family. You want to prepare them in advance. You could practice what it might look like through role play. You can give warnings before those transitions to ease the process. You could talk to the teacher and find out what is being used at school. And this goes back to what Lydia was saying about that communication, because if strategies are supporting your child at school, they might also be effective in your household. And you want to think about those sensory sensitivities. Many autistic people find crowds and noisy places overwhelming. So you might want to consider shortening the outing or finding a way to keep on the periphery or finding a safe spot to reduce some of that sensory input. Next slide, please. As we explore these tips, we want to keep in mind that all children are different. As Dr. Stephen Shore's famous quote noted, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So you know your child best. In saying that, some students benefit from the following. The time-based warnings before transitions, those 5 more minutes until we come to the dinner table, 3 more minutes. A visual timer could be very helpful for some kids. They may not be processing the language, especially if they have that deep focus on what they're doing, but a visual timer, like the one shown in the picture, gives them an idea of how much time is left. If needed, those visuals like first then can explain the change, and they don't always have to be contingent, as in the then being a reward. It could be just information. First, we'll brush our teeth, and there could be a visual of that. Then we'll put on our pajamas and a visual of that. If giving the instructions verbally, you want to clearly explain what's coming next and why, and encourage and praise your child for successful transition. Next slide, please. So for all of us, navigating life involves both big and little transitions throughout the day. And these are defined by movements and changes from either one place or environment or one activity. So some big T transitions, those big life-changing ones, could be starting or moving or leaving school. It might include graduating, moving to workplace. It might include starting kindergarten or moving from middle school to high school. It might be moving a new grade with a new teacher, even in the same school. It can still have a lot of uncertainty for a child, and so we want to support that. Moving or changing homes, starting a new club, or getting a new family member, either a sibling or a grandparent moving in, or going to a new experience. Those little T transitions are the ones that happen every day, getting in and out of the house, moving between different activities, moving or changing rooms in the home, or even changing clothes, having meals, getting to the bus. All of those are small T transitions. Next slide, please. So here are some ideas that might support your child or adolescent with these smaller transitions. Many kids benefit from some song or chant or repeated phrase that's used every time. Time for school that's used every time can trigger, oh yes, it's time for that transition. A lot of kids have their sensory system soothed by carrying a transition item, something that they're deeply interested in or focused on, a fidget or a picture or a book. You could assign a job, you please go out and open the car door so that I can put your sibling into the car, something to give them some responsibility and a focus of that transition. We already talked about the first then and the timers. As your kids get older, intermediate and secondary age, sometimes they don't want a lot of prompts from mom and dad. So you could use bells or alarms. You can set them on your microwave, the student's cell phone, and that alarm often promotes the prompts of transition. I use one every day to transition me out of sleep. Their transition items might be something that's important for the next task. A school bag by the door, or make sure you put their calculator out if math is going to be their first subject. You always want to provide additional time, so those warnings and being in a rush is going to raise everyone's sensory system and anxiety, so always try to add in that extra time. And then the other two we've already talked about. Next slide, please. When it comes to those big transitions, those life transitions, we want to increase the familiarity of the new environment by providing as much information as we can beforehand. If your child can meet their new teacher, if they can tour their new classroom, that's going to give them some information that's going to reduce anxiety and make it a smoother transition. You could have a picture book with pictures of the new environment. If they're starting a new club, going to scouts or guides, you want to show what it might look like. You could provide a visual countdown to when that day is coming, a calendar with the cross off. You can model and practice what it might look like. You might be the person to go with them for the first few days. You might be that transitional object to help them know that there's a place of safety as they're exploring a new experience. And use those self-regulation strategies, which we're going to talk about in the next section. But things like being a calm presence for your child, giving them something that they can focus on during the transition, a sketchbook or fidget toys. Sometimes we can support our kids' transition on the bus just by giving them something else to look at rather than just focusing on that transition, but looking at a game or a sketchbook. And of course, deep breathing for all of us will help us all stay regulated. So this is a good lead-in for Jocelyn's section, who will now talk to us more about regulation and co-regulation.
Great, thanks, Erin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn. I'm with Occupational Therapy and Physiotherapy Services. So this morning we've talked a lot about practical strategies that you may employ to support your children, about transitions to school, promoting language use, and transferring those skills back and forth from home to school. These are all important and essential strategies, but I'd really like to focus a bit more on relationship and regulation and the importance of your bond and support for your children, which will help to establish a sense of safety, comfort, and belonging, and how the development of these skills positively impacts interactions with adults at schools as well as their peers. Next slide, please. So what is self-regulation? This may not be a new term for you all, but this definition is provided by Stuart Shanker, who's a psychologist at York University, who formed the Merit Center and has been regarded as an authority and instrumental in developing self-regulation strategies and the concept as a whole. So self-regulation is the ability to manage your own energy states, emotions, behaviors, and attention in ways that are socially acceptable, and they help achieve positive goals such as maintaining good relationships, learning, and maintaining well-being. So this does include also being able to resist highly emotional reactions to upsetting stimuli, to help calm yourself down when you get upset, to adjust to changes and expectations, how to handle frustration without an outburst. Really another way to think of it is how do we deal with a stressor? And then how do we recover from the energy that's expended? So again, self-regulation is sort of a set of skills that enables us to direct our behaviors to achieve positive goals, such as maintaining good relationships, and learning and maintaining your own well-being as well. It is not something that's innate. It's a skill set that needs to be taught, modeled, and developed, practiced over time, and it's a lifelong skill. What research has shown that it's self-regulation is not fully developed until around 25 years of age in females and 30 years of age in males. And this differentiation is because of the biological difference of the corpus callosum in our brains, which is this component that integrates motor, sensory, and cognitive functions of the left and the right side of the brains. What I will mention too is that toddlers around 3 years of age, tweens around 13 years of age, they often demonstrate some difficulty with self-regulation because these are huge developmental phases within the brain. And at those points in times, there's an increasing need for a co-regulator, which we'll talk about shortly. And in these milestones of development, that's particularly important. Next slide, please. So what is co-regulation? Well, co-regulation is what we as humans are created to do and living beings are created to do. So infants and children learn to co-regulate by having adults model regulation and co-regulation for them. So how an adult reacts to stressful situations greatly impacts a student's regulation in the moment as they grow, or a child's regulation. It's a lifelong process. Research shows, as I'd mentioned before, co-regulation is most needed in toddlerhood, puberty, and early adult onset. And this is again where brain development, maturation, and reorganizing are most prevalent. So an example of co-regulation, as you can see on the screen, is if a baby is in distress and when the caregiver reacts or provides some sort of response. If, for example, a child trips or falls, they may look to yourselves for a reaction on what to do next, how to navigate that pain, that sensation, that fear. Teen co-regulation may be looking like having a trusted adult that they can go to or talk to just to confide in and to discuss further. And really the big points, as I mentioned before, and I want to emphasize, it's in toddlerhood, puberty, and early adults, where that co-regulation is really required to help build and develop that brain development over time. And it's lifelong. So I will mention too is that if there was a baby that was never co-regulated, that might result in difficulty long-term with self-regulation. That does not mean that it's definitive. As I'd mentioned, regulation is a lifelong approach. So there are opportunities to repair and to build that ability to regulate. Next slide, please. So what does co-regulation look like? And this lovely image is from Kristen Weens, who's a special education curriculum coordinator with the Sook School District. And this is done in collaboration with Dr. Stuart Shanker's Merit Center. Co-regulation talks about adjusting your behavior and senses, such as your voice, to alert or calm the other person. And then we talk about attunement. Attunement is a foundational element of co-regulation, and it requires a personal relationship. And what is attunement? It's the reactiveness that we have to another person. It's the process in which we form relationships. So Dr. Dan Siegel talks about attunement with co-regulation for children. He says that when we attune with others, we allow our internal states to shift, to come to resonate with the inner world of one another. This resonance is at the heart of the important sense of feeling felt that emerges in close relationships. And children need attunement to feel secure and to develop well. And throughout our lives, we need attunement to feel close and connected. So, it's that sort of sense of feeling seen, feeling heard, that someone understands you, knows where you're at, and can help guide and support you to navigate any stressors as well. What I will stress too is, as an adult, we are not always going to be regulated, and that's totally okay. But I think part of it is really about saying that and acknowledging that you're having a rough time, you need some space, and that's also what helps to develop and build a relationship of trust. And what does that look like? So next slide, please. What I want to emphasize is, as the caregivers for your children, you can't pull from an empty cup. So it's really important that you take the time to ensure that your needs are met so that you have something to pull from. Being aware of how we feel, acknowledging when if we're stressed out, that's completely okay. That's life. We're not going to always be able to take care of ourselves or those around us, but self-care is acknowledging that, and if possible, asking for that help. So if you think about interactions you've had with others, if someone comes into your space in a bad mood, just hearing from them that they're grumpy today because of a situation that arose before they encountered you is a way that they help to set the tone that their mood is not a result of you, right? It's not a result of that interaction, but because they're struggling with something else. So it already sets the tone for that relationship. And that's particularly important with kids, because often, when there is sort of a mood, there is this sense of ownership that they take on. Did I do this? Did I cause this? And just being able to tell them that, this arose because of something else gives them that sense of relief, understands sort of where you're at, and also understand that it's not as a result of your interaction with them. Next slide, please. So we talk about attunement and relationship, and how can we build that with your kids? So modeling our responses to stress. So really, if you're engaging in stress, modeling what you do in those sort of situations, how you manage to establish a state of calm and helping them co-regulate as well. So it might entail, if your child is struggling with something, it might entail just sitting and waiting. If you're struggling with something, it might entail, again, just sitting, waiting, taking some deep breaths, but that helps model for them what to do in an event that they're under stress as well. We talk about as well meaningful play and engagement with the preferred activity. So Dr. Mona de la Hook talks about joyful interactions, which are the foundation of robust social and emotional development. So, that engagement, that play is really about not only developing relationship, but also teaching them through a safe engagement of, ups and downs. We're playing with an activity, something goes awry, and oh shucks, what do we do now, right? All of that is modeling again, regulation, modeling co-regulation, sort of showing how they navigate tricky situations as well. When your children are struggling, as mentioned by my colleagues earlier, reducing language is important. When you're in a state of being overwhelmed, too much language is not going to work. At that point, the brain is offline. It's not ready to receive language. They're just overwhelmed. So keep in mind in those scenarios, maintain present, use nonverbal forms of communication to maintain connection and to show your children that you're there for them, right? Thumbs up, smiling, staying close. And this alludes to my next point, giving them a hug, right? Keeping physically close to them, get on the ground with them as well, holding them tight. And then also from that next step, really empathizing and validating their emotions. I understand you're frustrated right now. That was really a hard thing. And then from there in those situations about how do we move forward when they're frustrated, it's key to offer choice. The idea is provide them some degree of control. They're frustrated that we need to leave the house. Okay, what are some of the options? Okay, well, let's look at, we can opt to wear these shoes or these ones. Or alternately, it could be, okay, well, let's take a 5-minute break. We can either go in the yard to play for a bit before we leave, or maybe you can have an opportunity to watch your iPad before we go. So again, giving them some opportunity to have some degree of choice and control. That really is about building that relationship, that sense of trust, and that sense of attunement, right? So if you think, again, some modeling of stress for a parent may entail, what? We had a really busy weekend together this weekend. I feel like we had a great time, but my body is really tired. How do you feel? And creating those opportunities for building understanding, building relationship, and building that sense of safety between one another. And I think too, as I'd mentioned before, it is really important to verbalize sort of when you're not in a good space, so that they understand that they can also do that when they're feeling like that as well. Next slide, please. I just want to sort of close off my section from a quote from Dr. Mona de la Hook, which is, when we shift our perspective from my child is behaving badly to my child is struggling with something that is difficult, that's when we support resilience. So really reframe, shift, and think about that student's nervous system and respond to safety. It can really help with our regulation in this situation as well. I'm going to pass this on to my colleague, Katya.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So next slide. And before I get to the next slide, I just want to address, because there are lots of questions around very individualized situations in school spaces. And my recommendation and what we put in the responses are really reaching back out to your school principal and following the concerned parent protocol. We've I put the link in the Q&A, but we'll also we can get one of our members to put it in the chat so that you can look at the steps. And if you feel like your concerns are not being addressed, of course, there's a ladder of support that we provide to support your voiced concerns. So I just want to speak to that, because you may see that the individual situations, we're not responding to those more general questions around our presentation. Those questions really are for you to address with your individual schools. So looking at community programs and resources, if you can go to the next slide, Deanna. The one I want to really flag that I'm sure some of you know about, and some of you may not, is our after-school leisure program. And it's available to TDSB students in grade 4 to 10 with autism spectrum disorder. It is not specific to students in ISPs. It's all students with a diagnosis of ASD. Okay, every student that has that diagnosis can participate in this after-school leisure program. And really the focus is on helping to improve social and communication skills through activities. It's very hands-on, it's very social, and participants can either participate in person or through virtual sessions, and parents are encouraged to participate as well. And so some of the activities that they engage on are focused on turn taking, sharing thoughts and feelings, interacting with others, building empathy, identifying personal feelings, and using strategies to manage emotions and behavior. I've put the QR code there, so if you want to take a snap of that, you can go on that QR code to register. The locations are across the city, and of course, if none of the locations work, there is also a virtual session that you can take advantage of and register your child for. Next slide, and Deanna, I believe this is you.
All right, thank you. So, we spoke about many things to support your child, right? And children and youth. And this is a really great visual that shows how there are different items that that can support children and youth to, for example, we spoke about visuals, we spoke about self-regulation, we spoke about a variety of things. You know your child, and you know best ways to what you could see building into the home. But I'm going to click on some areas. So, for example, here's for example the sensory zone, and we know that there could be, oops, here we are. This takes us right to the OTPT public website that has, different tip sheets and information about, for example, in interoception and sensory pieces. Okay, so there's a lot of things on this slide that if you were to click on, it would provide you with further information. And I'm just going to go back to, our presentation today. Sorry, I'm just trying to get us back. And here we are. I'll click on something else. So here, as we spoke about visuals and visual support, here's an example. So I'm just clicking on to the visuals right now. It's loading up. And then this takes us to a site that can support picture activity schedules and visuals. There are many, many free resources like First and Then boards and things like that, that you may actually have precisely what the therapist is working on or precisely what the classroom is working on. But there are various resources here to support with schedules, weekly chores, and things like that. So this is a wonderful slide that you can actually just click on and take your time, and it will connect you to different resources that you can use with your child at home. Okay. Oops. Okay. Now, talking about resources, there is the Ontario Autism Program. Okay, there is definitely eligibility criteria. It's listed here. And that your child may be a candidate for this. My understanding is that your child would need a written diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. That is definitely a requirement, and live in Ontario. So if you have not already accessed this or have not heard of, we call it the OAP for short, certainly you can access it through the link below. Okay. www.accessoap.ca, and there will be further information there.
Deanna, I just want to interrupt just for a moment.
Yeah.
There were some questions around the QR code and it's not active. I flagged it for the owners of that. So what we can do is we can send directly the link after the sessions. I'm not sure why it's not live anymore. I believe that the due date to get them in was December, but if the due date has changed, we'll send you information for the next session, which would be in the winter. So just so you know, thank you so much for flagging that. I'm not sure why it was closed.
Okay, and you're referring to the leisure program?
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. So that
Mm.
sounds like a great solution. Thank you, Katya. Okay, continuing on. So again, there's just further information there, and there will be regarding accessing OAP, and there are coordinators to support you with your questions and next steps. Okay, and for example, what the options are, exactly what the services entail, and so on and so forth. Okay, additionally, we've also provided some links to community resources. These are government resources that can support, you and your family. For example, assistance for students with severe disabilities, services for at home, and so on and so forth. So please feel free to peruse these websites if you haven't already to see, if there are other external supports that would be appropriate and available to you. Okay, and here are some others: a Toronto-based family services, Surrey Place Center, and community living. And these three resources or community agencies, they absolutely support students with autism, but they also need to have the child or teen would need to have also a diagnosis of an intellectual developmental disorder. Okay, there you go. Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Okay,
Diana.
and finally, Effie, did you want to step in here?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah, no
And,
problem.
Katya referenced the parent concern protocol earlier, and we have a slide on this, and I'll work through this with you. If there are any situations that you would like to have specifically be addressed at the school, the first step is always to connect with a classroom teacher. Any questions or concerns should be flagged to the classroom teacher that is working with your child on a daily basis. If you would like more information, or if you have questions that perhaps go beyond the classroom or the scope of the classroom teacher and their responsibility, the next step would be to connect with the school administrator. And then further to that, the next piece would be connecting with the superintendent. So superintendents are responsible for families of schools, and they support school staff, administrators, of course, and they can be contacted if you have any questions that cannot be answered at the school level. And then, of course, to connect, if all else fails, the next step would be to connect with the trustees that are elected community officials if there's a situation that goes beyond the level of the superintendent. And so we just wanted to highlight the parent concern protocol that we all follow. And the next slide, please, Deanna. Thank you. And this is, we certainly want to thank everyone for being here today, taking the time out of your morning schedule to join us. We have a second, we have the same session that we presented this morning on a second night. So on a second day, that's tomorrow night, being offered at 6:30. If for any reason you jumped on here midway through the presentation, or you would like to see it again, it's tomorrow night, and we have a little QR code here that is working. It's an exit survey. It's just simple questions around your experience this morning, and it would really help us to really, as we're planning sessions, future sessions for you. We have a couple of more sessions planned, but we also have a number of drop-in sessions that are also planned. So we have a lot of opportunities to connect with our families. So please provide your feedback, and we will look at it carefully, reference it when we're putting together future sessions. So we really do appreciate the time that you'll take as this is our first session for the year, and we as I said, look forward to having more. And that really is our session for today.
Yeah, I just wanted to address that there are some questions in the
Yes.
Q&A that we're not able to respond to because they're very specific. So again, recommending that you connect with your principal. And there are some questions just around getting the slide deck. So what's going to happen is we're going to be posting this recorded session on our external website that you have access to, and I'm not. So I don't know if our OA is on the line, but Effie, do we also send the recording to the participants directly, or do we just put it on the site?
We put it on the site for everyone to access. Yes.
Okay, great. So it will be put on the site. So if you missed anything, not a problem. There was a question about how to connect with special education and inclusion staff. And again, that would be done through your school principal, and you set up an opportunity to connect with the consultant through the principal that belongs to your school, that's connected to your school. And that again can be done through your principal at the local level. So I wanted to recognize those questions. Because we obviously we can't answer ones that are specific, but those ones I think would be general questions that again you can work through your principal to access that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, I think we're done with our presentation today. If you've missed things or you want to participate in tomorrow's session, please do so. That session will be in the evening. Our next session, which is in the spring, we will have 2 session dates for that too. And the focus of that session will be on transitions. So just so you have a heads up, I believe when we sent the registration form, we did provide other dates of other sessions. So the transition session will be in the spring. Thank you so much for joining us today.